Welcome, everyone, to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. I'm a networking expert and the author of the upcoming book, No Strangers, How to Build Community, One Relationship at a Time. My why is the pursuit of mastery, and the goal of this podcast is to lock arms on a lifelong mission of daily personal growth to become the best version of ourselves. So let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. She's a practitioner in Reiki, in hypnotherapy, in neurobiomagnetism, as well as in tarot card reading. So welcome to the podcast, Mrs. Mariana Vomvas. Mariana, how are you? What's going on?
Good. How are you? I heard, I know you had a really hard night last night.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that your buddy is doing well.
Thank you. Yeah. You can hear in my voice. So people that are
Mm-hmm.
familiar with how I'm supposed to sound can hear that there's something different going on. So yeah, the story real quick is, I rescued a rabbit a couple months ago, and at 4 a.m. in the middle of the night, she was thumping in distress. So there's no vocals. They can't, bark or meow. So it's the thumping that tells you they're trying to communicate. So anyways, she was in distress. Her eyes were kind of lifeless. So you knew something was wrong. So I called the vet emergency 24/7. They're super swamped because of COVID. A bunch of the places workers have caught COVID, so they've had to shut down. So there's one for the whole city. So when I called at 4, they said, "We're really busy. Can you come in at 8?" So I stayed up all night with her to make sure she was fine. Went in at 8. Then I'm waiting all day and go and pick her up, and a little stressful. So lack of sleep, a little bit of stress. So you can hear it in my voice. I got the sniffles a little bit, and but you gotta, the show must go on. So I got some hot tea that'll hopefully help my voice hold up for this interview. So thank you for the well wishes you gave me. For Violet, and she's like a brand new gal. She's doing well today. So all is well there. Yes.
I'm happy to hear. Happy to hear she's recovered.
Thank you. So let's dive into this. So there's so many different titles of things that you're passionate about, your skills that you use to help others. So let's get started with the tarot card reading. So this is kind of how we got to know each other. So back a few years ago, both of us ended up at a personal growth event. So this was a friend of the podcast, Mr. James McNeil. So that was the first guest I ever had for an interview on this podcast. And he was doing an event on pure spiritual mastery, pure spiritual intelligence, And we met there through a mutual friend. We became Facebook BFFs. I didn't really talk too much, but just got to see our updates here and there. And then I saw you post that you were giving tarot card readings, that that you just wanted to get more experience to really work on your craft. So I signed up, I did it. I was blown away. Then I asked you, I said, "Hey, can my friends sign up? I know they would be interested." You said, "Yeah, sure." So then a bunch of my friends signed up, and they were blown away. And that's how we got where we are here today. So I actually have a quick quote from one of the friends that you did a reading for. So this is from Jennifer Doyle. Let me have this. Okay. She says, "Mariana gave me a great reading and is definitely a natural intuitive. She was right on with where things were for me, and I'm so happy that she proudly shares this ability that she inherited from her grandmother." So that's from Jennifer Doyle. So it's nice to get some great feedback. So I guess I'll share kind of what blew me away by our first reading. So this was a year ago, and then we just did another one a few days ago that we'll touch on. But when we did it a year ago, everything you said really resonated, and there are things that it's like, how can she know this stuff? The one that really blew me away was, it was during the pandemic, And there was a period of time where money was tight for me because all the ways that I make money are very social. Normally, I'm on a plane every few weeks for business. I'm running big events. I'm networking. I have people over. What else? Yeah, just everything I do involves in-person stuff. So suddenly there was like the cash flow kind of dried up, and that was a source of stress and worry for me. And suddenly you flip a card and you go, oh yeah, just stop worrying about money. In the near future, money won't be a problem again. It won't be an issue. And it's like, what? Like how do you know these things, right? And then at that point, when you said that, there had been real estate had tanked because people didn't know. With COVID, we didn't understand it. We didn't know if we just leave our house if we're going to die by going outside. So there were no showings, no houses selling for several months. And that was the period in which you told me not to worry about money. And then suddenly after that, real estate went to all-time highs, just irrational exuberance, people like bidding wars and just record-setting numbers. So suddenly I look into what I could get for my house if I sold it. And it was just an obnoxious amount of game-changing money. So I sold my house. I moved to Ottawa. Things are way different, and money was no longer an issue within a few months of you saying that. So I thought that was insane. And when we touch into the stuff that we just went over when you read the cards a few days ago, our listeners will hear all that as well. So I guess we'll start with, where did this come from for you? So Jennifer in her comment mentioned your grandmother. So this is a family thing?
Right. So, I mean, I want to just preempt by saying thank you, first of all. And it's so nice to hear people having a wonderful experience. And I know that not everyone does, and maybe they're not all happy with what they hear, but the fact that you two did, and it brought you this hope or whatever you felt, I'm very happy to hear. But not every buddy gets this inheritance of these gifts from just because they have a parent that is. I know that just from listening to people like, oh, my grandmother was psychic, and they don't have it, right? So I guess I'm not sure how it comes. So let me be straightforward. I don't know if it's a genetic predisposition. And I wouldn't say that I'm special in the sense that everyone can access this. Everyone has intuition. Just everyone doesn't know how to tap into it. And so part of what I like to do is also get people to tap into their own intuition. So I think it's a gift that we all have. I just listened more, or was able to listen, or had the tools to listen, or quieted my mind enough to listen to my intuition. But I think everyone has that. So my grandmother, we can talk about my great grandmother who lived in Mexico. She passed away when I was 11. So I was grateful. I was so fortunate to meet her, because not everyone meets their great grandmother. But I remember, so my experience of her is as a great grandmother, not necessarily a psychic healer. Later on, I would hear the stories of what she actually did, and I was like blown away. I just know that on Fridays, if we were in Mexico and visiting, there would be like chairs outside of her office, and like we're watching TV, and these like strangers are in the house, all sitting and like waiting their turn. And I think I thought initially like she was like a businesswoman, or I don't even know what she was doing. Like I wasn't really told what she was doing.
She kind of was a businesswoman, but
yeah,
with a different kind of business.
Right. Exactly, you're right. And I just knew like that's her office, and she had a piano in there, and we would go play the piano, or I mean when she wasn't using it and working. Anyways, so I have all these memories, but then I remember her like desk drawer, and I would open it and see these like stones and these like almost these like magnet fragments and the tarot cards, and she'd be like, don't touch my cards. But I wouldn't listen. We would touch her cards, and we would look at them, and we were just, I guess for me, I was always curious. I was a very inquisitive child, so I was always curious, like, what is this? And I would look at the pictures, and her tarot are different. I haven't seen them. They had Egyptian iconography on it, so I could see this like Egyptian stuff. So I was just always like, what is this? And then she had this like scarab, like the scarab little, it was almost like this made out of I guess a stone. And that was on her desk. Like I just have all these memories, and the memories of people sitting waiting for their turn to talk to her. And then as I grew up, and later my mom told me, yeah, those, they were waiting for readings. Friday was her day. For some reason, Friday was energetically a better day for her to do readings. And then my mom would say that every month she was invited to like a baptism, because my great grandmother was a godmother, because people who were having issues infertility, because she was also a herbalist. Sorry, I have to mention that. So I guess what she was doing, and I'm speculating because she didn't really tell anybody. But I guess what she was doing is scanning people or using her intuition to help heal them, and she would provide them with herbs. So a lot of herb healing, a lot of energy healing. Like I remember a story that stuck with me where she told somebody to sit in a tub in their backyard of water right at 12 o'clock to get the direct energy of the sun. So things like this. So I would hear these later. So and she'd always talk about spirit. And she'd say, don't be scared of spirit, be scared of the living, not the dead. Like, because everyone's so scared of spirit. She's like, the living are much more dangerous. So, and then even the story of once she came here, I think a couple of times she came, but she'd be like, oh, there's a very strong psychic here, a native. She'd tap into native energy here. So yeah, it was just, we were always like kind of a little bit scared of her, just like a tiny bit, but but loving her, obviously. She never read for children. I think she did read for my mom, but she didn't like reading for family that much. So I know that about her, but she just wanted to help. And truthfully, she would say donation, and people in Mexico in that area, like they weren't well off. So some of them would come with eggs from their chickens, food, some or whatever they could donate. But they were really loving people, and she was very loving to them and caring about her community. So I really like that. I honor that in her, and that's why even for me, I in honor of her, I say it's by donation. So,
So you said you guys were a little scared of her. Sometimes we fear what we don't understand, right? So we're not quite sure what's going on with her. And as you learn more about it, you realize maybe there's nothing to be fearful of. You mentioned that
right.
she felt better energetically on Fridays. Can we agree that I think we all feel better energetically on Fridays, right?
Absolutely. TGIF.
Her for different reasons, I would think.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think different reasons. I think for her, she knew a lot about astrology as well. I don't know that much about astrology, I'm going to be honest. And like, she'll come to me in dreams actually still. And that was the latest dream I had of her was her saying, learn about astrology. Okay. So that would be a next goal of mine. But yeah, Fridays was and it's true. I think we were just, it's funny because now what I was scared of is what people are kind of scared of about me. The reservations are like, I was like, is she reading my mind? Like, so I would always be worried.
Yes, I am.
She knew. Yes. So I'm like, does she know what I think? And no, that's not true. But anyways, yeah. So I think she was just a wonderful woman that really, she actually used the whatever donations she received into her reading to invest in real estate, to be honest. So
she was a businesswoman. I like it.
Yeah. But always like that energy of healing separated from the energy of making money. So and I have that where I say, if I want to use money, I almost say I use money to make money grow. But when I see the person in front of me, I see them as me. I feel we're all connected. And so when they stand in front of me, usually chances are I've gone through something they've gone through. I'm currently facing it. So it's almost like a mirror shows up. And I want to help. So I don't see it. And a lot of my clients can't afford to pay. That's fine. As long as, and I know people say, well, you need an energy exchange. You need an energy exchange. So money's the energy, and they have to know they're receiving something and they're giving something. And sometimes I say, just give me good wishes. Like, give me good energy. Just send that and your thanks. And knowing that from your heart, that's an energy of thank you. So yeah, I just admired my great grandmother, and she used that anyway. So she was able to raise four great grandchildren because my grandmother didn't really have a husband that was involved, and her own husband, my great grandmother's husband, died when she was pregnant. So I have a line of these like badass women where they were able to really um, like show up with their gifts and give those gifts to the world and know how to provide. I don't know. I just, yeah, I'm very proud of them.
In the business
Mhm.
world, I hear it said often that people that don't pay attention. So that's why you need the
Right.
transfer of
Mm-hmm.
something. So again, it doesn't have to be money, but if someone's providing you something, then they're going to take what you provide more seriously, because we don't value
Yeah.
stuff that's free, right?
Right. And I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. So I do think, I mean, in the future, I might really set prices and say like, this is, everyone's like, well, what are you worth? I think we're all priceless. We're all
Yeah.
worth infinity, really.
But you're
So
also,
I'll
it
be,
depends what your intention is. And right now, it's you're trying to develop this craft that comes through the generations in your family. And even though you do an amazing job, and it's, surprisingly, you're spot on with everything for someone that says they're not an expert and they're just,
mm,
trying to get better. But I guess that's, you're putting in your 10,000 hours right now, just like, even if I'm, say, talented on the guitar, it's like I'm going to play for free because I got to build up my craft to the point where people are willing to pay for it. So I think there's nothing wrong with
mm.
where you're at right now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the validation.
No
Yes.
problem. And you said that your grandma had the spiritual side, she had the business side, and somehow she was able to separate those energies. That reminded me of hearing that you should have separate rooms in your house for separate things, that those rooms, whatever you're doing in them, carries certain energy. Like if you have an apartment and it's smaller, it's like there were times where I had my workstation, like what I'm on right now, in the bedroom. So it's like I would do work in the bedroom, I would do recording in the bedroom, and that's also where I sleep. And I was told that the energy you have for the hustle and the work is in the same room as where you're supposed to be sleeping, and that can actually affect the sleep. I don't know if you've heard
Yeah,
that's
I have definitely heard of that. And I mean, I also have spoken to a feng shui master, Paul Eng, actually, in here in Toronto, in Thornhill. Um, so I agree with that because there you also associate what you do and the energy you bring in energy. I feel that way. So when you're in this creative mode and you're bringing that energy in, and then you're in your room and trying to sleep, sometimes you're overstimulated. So in that room, so I like to have a space where I do meditate and do my readings. And I tried it in my room and a few times, and I was like, oh, it's too much energy there for that. And I was getting downloads and and so much information coming in that I couldn't sleep. So I'm like, okay, this is not the space to do that. So I do agree with that. I think you should definitely separate the energy. And sometimes you can't avoid it. Like if you really can't avoid it, maybe just stay in that mindset or mind frame and like get yourself out of that mind frame of whatever other activity you're doing, especially for sleep. I really honor my sleep. For me, that's my restorative time. So I can't really, you know, look at screens before I sleep. I really have to,
you
and I have
shut
to keep,
down shut down the
yeah,
technology like 30 minutes or an
yeah,
hour before sleep, or
yes. And sometimes I don't. And, obviously, one of my
those
things that I'm
darn
working on,
Facebook
yeah,
notifications, they'll
I
get you.
know, I know.
Doesn't matter
It's true.
how enlightened
I
you
can't,
are. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. One of my addictions, because everyone has addictions, and it's just if they're healthier, and I'm trying to make much healthier addictions. But one of them is scrolling through the social media, and I'm starting to be just more aware of it and limiting the times that I do it. So I'll be like half an hour for the morning, maybe half an hour in the middle of the day and at night. But yeah, I really try to say I'm not bringing my phone into my room at all. But then my husband has his phone right beside, but that's his energy and what he does.
How
But
dare
at least,
he?
how dare he? But at least I'm not doing it and I'm in this mind frame and I'm doing these like nice deep breaths. And yeah, and I'm not thinking of any words. And that's like the number one thing I tell a lot of my clients. Do not worry and bring all your to-do list and all this stuff before bed, because the number one thing I've learned from Neville Goddard, who's this mystic from the 20s, or I think 30s, he always said, right before you go to bed is the time where you're going into a different brain wavelength, right? So you're going from the waking state, which is beta, right? And then you're going into alpha, and then you're going into your theta and delta. And when you're in this wavelength and you're just worried, you're almost solidifying your problems and like the to-dos, and like and most people do like their worst case scenario stuff right before they go to bed. Like, stop doing that. That's
Yeah,
the
you're
number one
setting
thing I say.
yourself up for a night of horrible dreams and
And
nightmares.
it's
Yeah.
and it's not only that, because according to Neville Goddard, what you think of at that sweet spot is what you'll manifest. So if you do nothing at all other than just sleep before you go to bed in that space, visualizing yourself with the feeling of, of your creation. So you're in your imagination and you're imagining this beautiful future event that you want to manifest to yourself. You will create it. And I've practiced that. This is Neville Goddard stuff. And anyways, I love that. And so I do tell my clients to kind of check him out if they want to, but at the very least, do not have worries before you go to bed.
And that's the point where you're starting to shift between your conscious and your subconscious mind, right? That's exactly what I hear. So it's the subconscious mind is however thousands of times more powerful than the conscious mind. And that if you can have your list of goals or dreams or the perfect life, if you can, before bed and when you wake up, those are the two times where you're shifting between subconscious and conscious, that you're putting a deeper imprint and you're changing your habits and your beliefs at a deeper level.
100%. That agreed. And you can test it out. I always, because there's an activity or an exercise that Neville Goddard would do, and it was like climbing a ladder. And you can YouTube all this; you'll see it on there. But I did the baseball thing, where I went with my husband because I wanted him to have buy-in, because I was trying to just tell him, don't go to bed with your worries. Anyway, so we did the baseball thing, which is you just visualize a baseball and you're holding it before you go to bed in your mind's eye. And how does it smell? And you want to engage all your senses, and especially your feeling. But I didn't even do this the quote unquote proper way. I was just like telling my husband in the middle of the day, just close your eyes. I tried to get him into a relaxed state. And it's almost like a meditation or hypnosis. So I tried to get him in those nice wavelengths, the slower wavelengths. So at least, we were in at least alpha, because if you close your eyes, you tend to engage that state. Anyways, and I said, just hold the baseball, throw it to me, smell it. And I engaged all the senses. And literally we did this once. And I said, I wanted to see the turnaround of it. It literally was 6 weeks on the calendar. I wrote it down just because I wasn't going to do it the effective way, which was every night doing this. So we did it once, and then we went for a walk in the park, and I picked up a baseball and I threw it to him. I'm like, there's the baseball. And I know people are going to be like, well, you were probably going to see a baseball, but the stuff that I see on YouTube about Neville Goddard is amazing, because they're like, oh, the baseball was in my bag. I don't even know how it got there. I did this 3 days ago and I only worked on it 3 days and this showed up. And the reason they do things that, you don't have a big preconceived notion about baseball. Like, you don't have this belief system around baseball. That's why, or ladders, he'll do a ladder walk thing, walking up the ladder, because you don't have like, I'm not good enough for a baseball. I'm not good enough to, how am I going to get this? But because sometimes if you want the buy-in, people right away, if you said you want to manifest money, $1,000 or whatever, million, they're like,
they have negative connotations. Yes. or
right. Yeah. Or they'll just say that's impossible. That's impossible. There's no way. Or they have this relationship with money. It can't come that easy. And some of his activities are just really seeing it, counting it. There's so many people on YouTube talking about this. So I like that. And I tell my clients a little bit about that, but we digressed about that, but I just find like manifestation is also something I work with my clients. So yes, as I'm doing readings, I want them to know that they are ultimately responsible for co-creating their life. They are ultimate creators, as we all are. And we're creating our own we're a microcosm of the macrocosm of the universe. And in our little universes, we're creating our own lives. So yeah. Sorry, I think I've digressed. So you'll bring me back.
No, we're following along. I'm enjoying the ride. So I did a similar exercise, but instead of a baseball, it was a lemon, that you're eating a lemon. So I believe this is Dr. Joe Dispenza, who you're a big fan of. So he was trying to show you how powerful thought is, and how, it's intangible. You can't put your finger on a thought, but that there can be physical manifestations from that. And so he has you thinking about a lemon, like smelling it, cutting it, and then taking it. And he goes, did you notice you're salivating? And you realize your mouth is just like filled with saliva. And even though that lemon isn't real, the thought of this not real thing produce the same effect of having an actual lemon in your mouth. And you're like, holy shit.
Absolutely. I think that's the power of the brain. The brain is like, there's people are saying like that we're just creating this, it's almost like a holographic nature, and you're almost producing from your brain your reality. So, I mean, that's getting deep into, this holographic nature, unified field theory. And I don't know if you've heard of Nassim Haramein. And these are like quantum physicists that almost, anyways, the point is, I feel like you can create in your brain the experience you want before it even manifests into your reality. So why not create the most positive, beautiful experience? Mind you, you do learn a lot from the negative experiences. So you do have the balance of both. And we talked about that. Like people, when they see, for example, a tower moment in the tarot, and I look at it and I'm like, great, the tower moment is everything kind of shifting. Your whole base gets just twisted upside down. So for people, that tower moment is a shock. It could be a divorce, it could be losing a job, but basically you're off balance. And I like the tower moment because then you get to reinvent yourself. So COVID could be a huge tower moment for a lot of people, right? So and
Yeah,
you got
rock bottom is a solid foundation to build a life upon.
yeah,
That's a quote that I've heard that I like.
I love that. Actually love that. I'll use that. But that's exactly it. So anyways, the point was, we're getting back to just what the brain is capable of. And I really, for me, one of my, and I'm gonna like fast forward to one of the times where I call it like receiving information from deep meditation. And one of the biggest things that I received in one of these deep meditations I was in was like a model of the brain. It was like spinning in front of my mind. And then I was shown the amygdala. And then I was like given scents to smell. So it was just an interesting understanding of what's happening to me specifically. Like my biggest subject is myself. So I always try to go in and try to understand, like, what am I experiencing? Like, how am I co-creating within my senses my reality? So anyways, that made me dive deeper into understanding the brain, and I really enjoy psychoneuroimmunology. So and so that's when I discovered Bruce Lipton, the biology of belief, how you really are with your own belief system creating a reality. Joe Dispenza, and especially Greg Braden, The Divine Matrix. That's a really good book about how and they've done studies, about you as being the subject are the direct participant of your reality. Like you're changing your reality by observing it. So the observer actually changes the experiment. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, the observer changing the experiment. You see that in science all the time. Like I'm no expert,
Right.
but it's something about like atoms or energy that they don't exist until there's an observer. Like there's nothing
Right.
there, and then once there's an observer, they show up, and it's okay. And then also the experiments with plants, where it's like some plants are given love, like words of affirmation and kindness, and some plants are given like hatred and words, nasty words. And the nasty word plants just give up their will to live, and they die, and the other ones flourish. And it's like, what is that? There's this energy that we just can't see.
That's amazing. And that reminds me a lot of Emoto's experiments, the Japanese scientist who worked with water. So he has experiments where like he'll eat the same thing. He'll take a petri dish of water and say negative words or negative energy, and then loving words, and then freeze the water. And then you see these beautiful crystals of the water, and the structure of the water changes. And then into this beautiful patterning. And then the one like received the negative energy receives this, there's no structure to it. It looks, broken, dull, or whatever you want, however you want to describe it. And that just gives a testament to, we're not over however percent water we are. I always get that wrong,
A
but
lot. I don't know, 80% or something. We're
yeah,
just
80%.
gonna make it official. 80%.
We'll make sense. Okay, we're 80% water,
Yeah.
And imagine when you give that energy. So that's why I love energy work, because the science now is corroborating with the what we know intuitively. Like you're finally there's scientists now who are interested in energy, right? Because there was no way of validating this or studying or using any sort of tools to measure, like, and how do you measure, right? Like energy in someone, or giving Reiki to someone, like how does that show up? And usually it was anecdotal, how they felt, right?
Yeah.
But science really wants hard evidence. So I know there's like a Center of Noetic Sciences that works with people who have like telepathic abilities and this and that. So there are scientists trying to do this research. But anyways, the structure of water, I started doing that. So like, for example, I have water here, and I'll bless water now before I drink it. I'll say thank you, and whatever I need to say, and that's personal to everyone. And these are kind of tidbits of information that I give my clients, because as I learn, I'd love to teach others of what I'm learning and how it feels. And to me, so it's beneficial. There's a great, you can just YouTube a documentary on water and the structure of water, and Emoto's experiments is a really good one. And it just, you can heal. I think water is healing. I think anything you direct energy and intent with healing and love can change the structure of it. So of even people. So that's why I really do feel that this kind of energy healing and intent can really change people. It really does. Because I felt it as a, as receiving end of it, is of going to practitioners myself and receiving energy healing. And now that I practice it, I can hear it from my clients. But yeah, so, I also wanted to say, like, for the intuition abilities that people have, because you were talking about like experiencing the taste and the smell. People have this intuition, different modalities of intuition, of how they sense and perceive with their intuition. And I call them the clairs. Like there's the clairvoyance, which is the ability to kind of see in the mind's eye. And then there's the clairaudience, the people that kind of, when they're meditating or in that space, can hear. So they hear information coming to them, extrasensory information. There's clairsentience, which is the feelings. That's mostly where I operate from, the clairsentience. So I feel when I tap into, when I'm doing Reiki, I'll feel in my own body, for example, knee pain. And I'll say to the client, do you have knee pain? And they'll usually say, yes, they do. Or, and if they don't, that's fine. I just say I'm not scared now to say what I feel, just in case I'm correct in hitting the areas that they need more treatment in. But there's clear aliens where you smell, and that I get a lot of too. Like, when you think you smell, the memory of the smell comes back, and it's usually my great grandmother, or I'll have the smell of, my grandmother used to smoke her cigarettes and her cream, and it was this mixture of cigarettes and cream. And I was like, I smell it all of a sudden.
That's quite the combo. Yeah.
I know.
It's memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a perfumey smell with cigarettes, but it was her smell, right? She smelled cigarettes. Anyways, and the clairgustance is the taste, that brings back the taste, and the claircognizance is when you just know. And I get a lot of that. So I get a lot of just knowing. I don't know how I know. It just enters my mind and it's like, I know this. And when I work with clients and if I say what comes into me, the perception I get and just the knowing, and I'll just say, I this came to my mind. And a lot of the times it's correct. Like, how did you know that? And I don't even know. I don't know how I know, but sometimes it just hits me that way. So, as a kid, I was very sensitive.
How
So,
early on did you
mm,
know that you had this intuition? Like at first, did you just think like,
I,
oh, this is strange? Or like, did you think it was a
no,
gift? Or did you think, does everyone have this? What are kind of your thoughts when you think
yeah.
back to that?
So, like, I never, okay, because I was aware of my great grandmother's gifts, I never thought I had that. 'Cause, I was told like she really could see and tell people like really specific information. So I didn't think I had that initially, but I was very sensitive in my home. Like, I knew my mom was unhappy. Like, my mom was unhappy. She eventually like left the marriage, but when I was young, I could feel her unhappiness, even though she's smiling and putting on this face and getting everything done around the house. But I was so aware of her unhappiness. Like, I could feel it. And I'm like, but how is she putting on this strength for us? But I knew she was unhappy. And I would say as a kid, you should divorce dad. I didn't even know what that meant, but I just felt like that would make her happier, just being in her own energy. Anyway, so I think it was very early on. So I had that clairsentience. That feeling was probably around 3 or 4. I guess I wasn't sure. I wasn't comparing myself to anyone. And I don't really think other than telling my mom you should get a divorce, I don't think I really expressed myself that much as a child with my mom. I hid a lot. I was severely bullied by a bully, and I call her a bully, but she's obviously a beautiful person, and I know where her conditioning was and why she did what she did to me. But I was only like just before I turned 4. She, my parents wanted us to have play dates and they left us alone. And then she exposed me to a lot of pornography and like from her father's, I guess, stash of pornography and whatever. And then she did molest me. And when I was in such fear, not because of, I think it was shame, right? And fear. And she would use what we did to bully me at school and say, everyone, they're going to take you away. What we did is bad. And she just really um, manipulated me with that. So it was almost like trauma bonding, or I don't even know if I'm using that correctly, but I was so traumatized and I never wanted to go to school. I would wake up and I would want to vomit because every day was a navigation of how I would navigate her. Like, what am I going to do to stay away from her like energy? I could feel, but she was hurting. But I was a 4-year-old and 5 and 6. It happened for many years, and I never told my mom. I like never. And then eventually I started telling her, this person's bullying me, and she saw I was unhappy around her. But anyways, what I would feel from her, so I knew it was like she was angry, but I would like pay attention to her, and I'm like, but she's hurting. She's sad, but she's really mean. And so I would get all this information that I didn't know how to deal with because I never used my voice. I was terrified to use my voice then because I thought we would get in trouble. And I'm assuming she said to me what was said to her was, they're going to take you away. If you tell anyone, they'll take you away. You won't be with your family and things like that. So I think later on as an adult, I went for a practitioner in German new medicine because I had really bad bursitis. Anyways, he says, my brain, because this German new medicine talks about constellations. I don't know much about it other than I visited this practitioner who was able to like tell me the shoulder was an area in my basically brain that was experiencing a conflict. He said the reason I probably had psychic abilities or intuition because I had a constellation of fear and anxiety as a young child. And like that it was almost like an imaginary world that I brought along. So I need to do more research into that. But he basically said my trauma is what made me was was actually the reason why I was able to have these extrasensory perceptions, because I was trying to make sense of my world. So I want to potentially look more into that. So I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's true.
I think
Yeah.
you know, kids, if their parents aren't happy, generally, because you're a kid, you still want more what's best for you, where they would want the parents to stay together. So I think that shows how different you were, where there was already kind of this intuition and this selflessness, that it was more like, well, my mom's unhappy, I think she would be happier if they got a divorce. I think that's pretty telling in you know.
Interesting. I never took that perspective. Thanks. Yeah. I really could. You're right. As a young kid, I could feel people's emotions. Yeah. And I would say that happened early on. And then when I would really, like, dreams would come true for me. So, as I got older, I had dreams of something happening, and it would happen. And I usually didn't really say it. But as I got older and people knew I was intuitive, I would tell, like, even a few years ago, my friend was pregnant. I'm like, I had a dream you were pregnant. She's like, and she was like pregnant at the time. And I also had dreams where I had miscarriages, and right before the miscarriage, I'd always have this dream where I would see blood in the toilet, and the next day or 2 days later, sure enough. And I was always terrified of that, because it was, yeah, those were hard times for me.
Not all the
Yeah.
visions are what you want to see, right? They're not
Yeah.
all rainbows and unicorns and
No,
sunshine, and yeah.
they are not all that.
That's
No,
that's
they're
the
not.
gift and the curse of being an intuitive, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. And part of me sometimes wondered, I'm like, am I manifesting this? I hope I'm not. And I don't want to manifest this. So I just want to observe a lot of the times without judgment. And I just want to sometimes when I see things, I just let it be without saying, well, no, I want it to look like this, because I'm very aware of, again, of you creating your life based on your imagination. So I always want the best. And so when I do see my clients, I always imagine them in the best possible light. But sometimes going through the darkest hour is what brings you to the light after, right? So after this rain, there's always the sun that comes out after the big storm. And sometimes that is what will heal them more than just happy, pretty, lovely rainbow moments, puppies, especially heartbreak. When I see the clients that have gone through the most heartbreak in their life, I think Rumi said it, where the heart breaks, the light comes in. I'm obviously paraphrasing completely wrong, but that's where the most growth happens, because that's the inner strength people find, and the inner love. I used to go for walks all the time with my friend, and we'd be like, what's the purpose, and what's the point, and what is it all about? And we'd be like, self-love. It's like loving yourself and feeling that energy of love. And so for me, that energy has always carried me
Yeah,
through a lot.
a lot of us as adults,
Mhm.
a lot of our challenges stem from childhood trauma that hasn't been
Mhm.
looked into, that hasn't been resolved. How often do you come across childhood trauma with your clients, where they just
Right.
I've
So
heard I've heard something that if there's something that bothers you that is, say, more than a year old, that means you haven't come to terms with it. You haven't really looked into it. You haven't learned the lessons from it. You haven't let go. So it's if anything's over a year old, there should be no emotional attachment to it. There should be, I don't know, that's what I heard. So if you go all the way back to childhood, if that's still something that bothers you, it's that you haven't dug deep enough in what was the lesson there and resolving it.
I have to agree with you. Like, Joe Dispenza and all these, like, I call them the spiritual scientists. They say that you're programmed from 0 to 7. And even in my study of neurobiomagnetism, they say you're in neurobiomagnetism. Neurobiomagnetism. I don't
See,
even
that's
know.
how hard it was for me to
Yeah,
do the intro with all the crazy words, your titles. Yeah. It's not easy, is
Yeah.
it? Now you know how it
No, we're
feels
not.
hosting this. Yeah.
Don't tell anyone I was a speech pathologist. Oh dear. Anyways,
Yeah.
anyway, so in neurobiomagnetism, they say that your brain goes into temporal recurrence. And that what that means is you're firing the same neurons when you're in a state of, I guess, limbic stress. So anxiety, and so like a trauma, let's say. And so you will survive and use certain neurons and create this pathway where that helped you survive. But then you're always approaching everything, any sort of external event with the same neurons. And so it's almost like you're reliving traumas, and each time you're going back to what would be called a temporal recurrence. So I agree. So, and in other terms, that would be really when you're programmed a certain way, like they say we're programmed, and you're just using the same kind of conditioning to, and if it's in trauma, or if it's even, I don't know if it's even not in trauma, but if you're in trauma and you're using the same conditioning you've always used, and you're applying that to all these situations, so they'll show up. They say it shows up constantly for you to heal it. So what you said, exactly what you said. And I think that was happening with me. And so when I see it in my clients, I'm not a therapist. Listen, I'm not a therapist. I'll tell them, a lot of the times I tell my clients to go see a therapist because I don't have psychotherapy training. Listen, I had an undergrad in psychology, but that's not a therapist. But I'll say, I'm picking up this energy, let's say, of, and sometimes it's a father and mother, and usually it stems from like father and mother stuff. And then they'll reapply it to every situation. So for example, someone that had a narcissist parent, they tend to attract that. So you're attracting the same kind of energy until you heal it. And it's so interesting. So I'm like, maybe you want to, and I'll just put something out like, maybe you want to explore your relationship with your parents, right?
And okay, I got to touch on this. So
okay, yeah.
There's one of the best-selling relationship books of all time is called Getting the Love You Want. And essentially it talks about, there's this theory that the partner that you choose is essentially your parent of that sex, and it's giving you a second chance to overcome or fix what you didn't like about that parent. So when you were a kid, you couldn't control that you had a narcissistic parent, say, I don't know, mom, and that you then go and you choose a narcissist because that's something you were familiar with. And this is a chance for you to actually change a person. It's like, again, the childhood trauma pulling that forward, and you think like, ooh, that's gross. Like I keep trying to date my mom or my dad. And it's true. Like I've had so many partners that are like, oh man, you remind me of my dad, like super driven business. But that's also what they didn't like about their dad, that the dad wasn't home that much, that they didn't get the emotional stuff because they were always out and more like a robot, grinding and doing the work. And, on the dad's side, it's like, we were broke growing up, and then I worked hard and built a business and gave you a great life and provided for you, but that's not what the child wants. Right. So so there's that book, Getting the Love You Want, and it goes deep into that, and you're like, oh, that's weird. But I think there's probably some truth there.
I definitely agree. I'm just writing the book down because every time a book comes up that I need to read, I have to write it down or put it in my phone. But there's 100% value in that. I mean, we're both not psychologist. I don't think you are you a psychologist? But
well, I claim to be on Fridays. I claim to be,
just like me on Fridays. But I still go to a psychotherapist, and he said absolutely that. He said, you absolutely, this is like 100%. You subconsciously attract your parents. He was like, that most people do it, the ones that are not in conscious awareness. Then you have the opposite, where the people are like, I'll never be with them, never one, and they like purposely look for it. But then this subconscious energy comes in, and they've attracted some quality that they were avoiding, and it showed up. And I think it's really interesting because I did that. And part of me also had to learn that I'm not projecting onto my partner the trauma I received from, like, let's say my dad had a lot of anger issues. We used to call him the Incredible Hulk. We never knew when he was gonna like turn into the Incredible Hulk, and he wouldn't remember. Like he would like punch walls or something. And I love my dad. Like he's a wonderful guy. So I don't want to like make it seem like he's this like tyrant. But there's parts of our personality and behavior that we're conditioned and want to improve on. So I'm sure that's something he wanted to improve on eventually. But then he wasn't aware. So he was this like anger, and I was and this tyrant. And so I made sure, I'm like, I am never finding someone who's angry. Like I need them to be the most gentle and understanding and patient person. And you know, um, but my dad also had other, you know, he had good qualities. He had a lot of like laughter, and there was so much humor, and that's kind of one of my things that I loved. I love humor, and so I everything I kind of probably avoided. It still showed up though for me to heal, like other things. I don't want to get too much into detail because it's not about like my life and my psychological understanding, but knowing some of these things has helped me with my clients. So, and going into therapy and being like, aha, those moments of awareness of myself, of my conditioning, of what happened to me, of like the trauma, how I responded to it, how it's coming back subconsciously in a cycle. I think everything cycles. I think like when I go into deep meditation, I'll see like geometric patterns and like cycles, and I feel like that's what we do. We revisit and we cycle back, and maybe it's neurology based. So the brain, and so that's why I get into neurobiomagnetism, where the brain is conditioned in that certain way, and neurobiomagnetism will use like a low frequency electromagnetic pulse to make the other neurons more discoverable, as well as your awareness. So say you have other options, you know, there's other neural pathways here that you can discover to address these situations. It doesn't have to always be this pattern. So yeah, I definitely want to read that book because like I think it's 100% true.
It's
If
very
you're not
true.
aware,
I
I
went
really do.
I went in high school. I went on a date with a pretty girl, and I was dropping her off, and I look over, and she looked like my mom, but like a young, like a,
Yeah.
that was it. It was like I can never unsee that. And it's like there's nothing wrong with this girl. And it just, unfortunately, she
Like it's
reminded me
like
of
that.
what my mom looked like when she
Yeah,
was younger, and that was game over. So
that's like that
sorry, girl.
commercial. I don't know if you've seen that commercial where he's like, "You're weird. You're dating someone that looks like mom," and then like I don't know what it is, and they look exactly the same. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I just noticed. I think it was like eggs for dinner, and like that's weird, and you're weird." Or anyways, the whole point is like, yeah, it's so subconscious, I think, and I think it's probably um programmed in us as an evolutionary means potentially. You know, you stay in your tribe. This is, you know, people tend to like marry within the same tribe, let's say, and it's also what they're used to, right? So not everyone has a negative experience with their parents. Most people, to be honest, after like living life, have very positive experiences with their parents, right? And they want to look for that. They're looking for somebody that had those qualities in their dad that they really admired, in their mom that they really admired. But
Yeah.
it's funny when you're not used to it, when they look alike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see a couple where they look like brother and sister.
Yes.
Like they both have blue eyes, they both wear glasses, and you're like, that's kind of weird. Like they're both
It's true.
attractive people, but they look like the same person, but like the other gender.
Yeah. I've gotten that about my husband and me. We were like, I remember we were randomly, I don't know, actually, no, it wasn't randomly. We were in the hospital because he had appendicitis, anyways, and I was taking care of him. And the nurse was like, "Your brother." I'm like, "What? That's not my brother." That's my husband. I was like, yeah, so I definitely can see that. I can see. And then you get the people that kind of start looking more alike once they start dating. But yeah,
I've
I get that.
that's funny. So I have a French Canadian background, and
Yeah.
I dated a Portuguese girl for 4 years, and never in my life had anyone ever said, "Oh, are you Portuguese or you look Portuguese?" And once I started dating her, almost everyone I met, they're like, oh, do you have a Portuguese background? And it's like, I must have picked up like some mannerisms or something.
Right.
But just like you said, like a couple, as they're together longer, they start to look alike or act alike. So I got that somehow with a Portuguese girlfriend. I became semi-Portuguese. So
I get it. I get it. And I guess, from what I've read, it's evolutionary, like to be accepted in the tribe, you're more like them, you're similar, you adopt the mannerisms, and it's based on survival sometimes, right? Like you, you know,
tribes were
it's
life or
true.
death. If you
Right.
if the
Yeah.
if you got kicked out of the tribe, you were dead because
Right.
the wildlife would kill you, the other tribes would kill you. So you had to
Yeah.
fit in, you had to be liked.
Right.
So tribes were
You did.
everything. And that's why we still have
Right.
tribalism. You can't just
Yes.
go against your
Yes.
programming, you know?
That's it. And I think that's it. It's like this programming that you have. So you assimilate to your tribe. I get that.
Mm.
Totally. So for me, it was hard to get into, not hard, but I found not many people knew about tarot reading in my life, like other than my family in Mexico. So my dad's Greek and my mom's Mexican. And I think my dad and like my husband's Greek, so I married a Greek man, like my father. But I think his family wasn't sure what this like terror. I was almost like very hesitant to say I left a career in speech and language pathology to delve into energy work. So it wasn't tarot initially. Tarot was always like for fun for friends and family. But initially I got into hypnotherapy. And I remember trying to justify it because the person I went to was Debbie Papadakis at the Hypno Healing Institute. The first time I went and discovered for myself what the powerful effects of hypnotherapy. And I was going through what I would say was my midlife crisis, my early midlife crisis at around
Your
35. I was
your quarter life crisis or your
I go
third
to
life
yeah, yeah.
crisis? Or...
My third life crisis, where I just like practicing in speech. I had the two kids. I had, this wonderful husband, the house, and I was the most unhappy I'd ever been. And part of it could have been I had postpartum. I definitely did after my second. But I was just so unhappy. I felt like I was just going through the motions. I had no real passion in my life. I was a robot. I was a robot. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be so happy. Why am I the most miserable? And that's when I kind of dived into meditation. I dived into like hypnotherapy. And when I met this woman, Debbie Papadakis, and she regressed me. Like I went and I wasn't sure what to expect. And when I went into my subconscious, I call it like that, like the real subconscious. And we, and she got me into this state. And then she said, I can't remember exactly, but like travel and see who you need to see, right? And I went right to the bully that I had. And it was still the trauma of that, I think. And I just started, she said, look at her. Now look at what happened to her. And I had never taken that perspective. And I know people do in ayahuasca do that, where they'll like go into the energy of, the trauma, and then they'll actually take the perspective and then see what happened in their abuser's life or something. And they'll see what happened and you'll realize it's all a cycle. And it's a conditioning anyway. So I did that in hypnotherapy, and I just cried, and she's like, tell her what you always wanted to tell her. And I had never used my voice with her, and I was like first screaming, and she's like, scream, tell her. And I remember I was like so timid because that was my child. That inner child was so timid, and she's like, tell her to F off, right? Like I can't even say it. And I was like, F you. All these years I was so scared. I was vomiting before going to school. I had nauseous, and like you took away my childhood. And she was like, say everything you need to say. And then she didn't leave it at that, where I was just left in a state of anger. She was like, now look at her. Now look at her. Now really see her. Now is she, and I'm like, wait a second, she's sad. Wait, I'm hurting her more. And then she's like, what happened to her? And I'm seeing this little girl that's wounded. Of course, she was a little girl that was so wounded. I don't know if it's true or not what happened to her, but I could see what happened to her in that kind of like that conscious state by her dad. And I don't want to speculate, maybe it's true or not, but in that you know, state that I was in, that's what I saw. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening to her. I feel, I'm sorry. And I wanted to protect her and I could forgive her. And it was like forgiveness, which is like a key Christian concept, forgiveness. It's like for yourself, it's to let go of all this bondage within you and these energies and these trauma. And I just forgave her. And then I could forgive my dad. And then like my mother-in-law came up, who I didn't ever feel good enough for her. Now it's totally gone. I've like, some of the things she would say to me. And I remember holding on to that a lot. It was just holding on to a lot of what people thought of me or my conditioning or how I had to survive in what energy I had to survive in. And I could just let it all go and start fresh. So I know you said you're going to a hypnotherapist.
I am, yeah. Well, when we think back to being bullied, like I was bullied in like grade 9 or something. When we think back, when the bullies were older than us, we see them as like, almost adults or a lot older. But then a lot of times when you think back, it's like you were 3 or 4 and they were, 6 or 7. And it's like, if today I brought you one of my nieces that are 5 and 7, and it's like, that's your bully. Like that's the age of your bully. And you realize they're ridiculous. Like they have no idea what's going on. I find like that helps to look back and to put it back into this bubble of they were a child figuring things out. They were bullied. They had no idea what was going on. So it wasn't like this prey, this person that was preying upon you. It's like they were young and naive, just like you were. They just happened to be like a year or 2 older.
Exactly. Yes. When you put it in that way, when you're in it, it's the biggest thing for you, right? Like, first of all, when you see a child's perspective, like the only thing they know in their world is what they're experiencing. They don't have the eyes of the adult yet. They're not there. They can't go into that. That's why it's so important to listen to children, what they're going through for them. That, and I know we say like, just stand up to your bully or you just tell them no. And the truth is, potentially that would have worked. I just never told anybody. Like I had no support. And the support I had, I remember I had this Bible like for kids. And I would read it. I wouldn't read that. I wasn't reading them, but I would look at the pictures and I would see the picture of Jesus sitting and like all the kids were around him and the animals, the baby animals. And for me, it was like, I want, and because my dad was a little bit, I couldn't talk to my dad then. And I could have, I felt like I couldn't. I'm sure I could have. And my mom, they would have been there 100% for me. I just felt like I couldn't. But I remember seeing this like picture of Jesus and being like, just take this burden, like just take this from me, and like seeing this picture. And I would always go to this children's Bible, and really it helped me a lot, even with other trauma. And then I kind of got rebullied again in grade 9, where it was like, that's it. I thought I could, I think I thought I didn't really contemplate suicide, but I thought about how nice would it be to just go to heaven, and like leave this earthly plane. And then I realized, no, and I get it. And it was hard for me in grade 9.
Got great. It's like grade 8, you're at the top of the totem pole, and then grade 9, you're at the bottom again, so grade 9 is pretty challenging for everyone. Some more than others, but
others. Anyways, but I just remembered that finding these modalities, or not even modalities, these like areas of strength that would solidify my inner strength. So just, I could make it. And I did have good friends, and I did talk to my mom a lot, but I never wanted to burden my mom because I knew how much was on her plate. She's like working full time, all this, my dad, and I had a sister who also was having a lot of mental health issues. So, but so then I really found this inner strength and using my intuition a lot to just navigate. And then I moved schools, and then it was great. But so anyway, people are like my friends, when they know I'm doing this, initially we would use like tarot as just fun. Like I had a friend in grade, I think I was in grade 11, and we were really into psychic stuff. And her mom, she was Macedonian. She passed away now in the Susie, and from cancer, and her mom would read our cups. So these like Greek or Turkish coffee. You flip the cup, and that's like tea leaves, and we would always be like, read our cups, and she would like read us like our and we just loved it. I remember being like, oh, I want your mom to read my cup, and I'd come over and she'd read our cup, and it was just, I don't know, we just loved hearing it. And not everything happened the way she read it, but
Yeah.
we just wanted to have that, and it's hope, I think. Like, oh my gosh. And at that age it was very much like, just like you going into university or whatever's on your mind at that age that you needed support in.
So at the start,
And
you would do tarot
oh
readings
yeah,
mostly for friends and people you felt comfortable around.
right,
Was there hesitation? Because some people have, negative thoughts towards
right,
tarot. So I've heard religious people that think,
right,
you have to be careful because the spirits that you're speaking to might not be who they say they are. That tarot
right.
is the cards of the devil or whatever. Have you heard this stuff, and did you have hesitations? And now are you a
um
point where look, this is a skill that I have, this is a service that I offer that helps people, that offers people hope. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I was aware of that because I definitely heard that. And my mom even said it, like, people when she was growing up would say, oh, your great grandmother's a witch. Oh, and this and that. But I knew my great grandmother, and I knew how loving she was, and I knew, first of all, I knew she was very Christian. And so so for me, it's it initially I was hesitant, more of like the perception of others in general. I was about everything, like, what do people perceive? And then I just went, no, I think it's a neutral tool that I can use. I'm the one that creates the energy in what I think about something. So I am putting energy into it, and I'm going to put the energy of love into this. Because I was hesitant initially because I had heard that. I'm like, what?
So it's
And
different
then
than
I'm like,
like a seance or
no,
something
yeah, I
else,
don't.
right?
I'm not invoking spirit, really. I'm just tapping into um, like a, when I definitely want to be in that zone, I'll go into like more of a meditative state. And half the time I don't even put myself in that state, and I just like, okay, we're gonna use the cards, and then I shuffle the cards, and then I read them. I read them based on, I've taken a few courses about tarot reading, and I use what I feel, what I see, what comes up from my own feeling, intuition, that claircognizant, whatever comes up, I'll say it. And I don't really put stock into that. And the people that believe that won't come see me, really. But I definitely know, for me, I ask for benevolent forces and really love, the energy of love for it. I know I heard that too about Reiki. People said that that's like anti-Christian, but I'm like, when I did Reiki, I didn't even think about that. Like, someone said it once, and I was like, huh, I never went there. Like, I never went there to those negative aspects. I always stayed in light and love. And I'm like, when I do Reiki, yeah, it was, Reiki master say you ground yourself, and you bring the energy, the ki, the chi, the prana, life force energy through you. And I always invite, like, for me, one of my mentors or kind of role models is Jesus. So I'll invite the spirit and the energy of Jesus for me. Like, so that's for me. That's not for everyone, but they say invite who you need to when you're doing healing. And so I don't know. Like, I don't really have an answer to tell people. They're going to believe what they want to believe, but I believe this. When I go into it, I believe wholeheartedly that I'm coming from a place of love. And this, and really the spirits, like, listen, I don't consider myself a medium. I don't really invoke spirit in doing this. So you're right. It's not a seance. I'm just kind of reading the cards, using my intuition with what comes up with me, helping the client, with just what I see. And a lot of the time I tell them, and most of the time I always say this, if you don't like what you're seeing, what I see, maybe in the future, change it. You are co-creating your life. You're creating it. I'm just seeing this. And that's a potentiality that I probably picked up from your energy of where you might be going. But there's so many potentials. Like, there's infinite potentials. Like when I went into meditation, I could see one time grids and over the whole earth, and like grids coming out of people, and how everything is a probability. Like every future probability exists for people in, and they can create it and they can just tap into it. I was like, and that's what I want to tell my clients, you can tap into it. And when I read these books about creating and manifesting, and they said the feeling is the key, and the so what you feel you kind of bring in. So Greg Braden talks about that a lot too. And he does quote the Bible a lot to say how in Isaiah, so I'm paraphrasing again, but like people can look into it on their own, but how the feeling magnetizes the reality, and like the thought is what you want, and then the feeling brings it to you. So I like telling people that. I really like telling people they have the power. Listen, if they are going to believe something negative about me, they won't come see me, really, because they have to know that I'm really about love, and I definitely tap into that feeling of goodwill and love for people. I really want to see them succeed. They are me. We're all in this together. We're all connected. I really do feel that, and we're co-creating. And I show up in this energy of love, and I definitely love for people to expand their awareness, and about consciousness, about being able to change their realities. Yeah. And if they want to, some people are extremely happy with their reality and continue, but if they want to change it, it's possible. And I come in as a tool to help people. A lot of people tell me I gave them hope, and I remember when I was having all my
is that not the best gift that you can give somebody?
I know.
Like what? What do we have if we don't have faith or hope, right?
Exactly. And if good for them, if they can find it within themselves and they can find it in the Bible, and they don't make good, great. I'm not like, in the sense that I'm not selfish in the sense that I want everyone to come to me for their awakening. You get to your own awakening however you want to. And if I can help along the way, I'm happy to help. I'm happy for you to expand your consciousness, to know that you're a co-creator, to know that you have this in your internal belief, and your feelings can create this beautiful reality that you want, that's in your mind, that you can create. And if I can help along the way, I'm so happy and honored. I'm so happy and honored when people come to me. I'm like, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey in life. And I always learn from my clients, because like the mirrors show up. Mirrors always do show up for you.
I have a mentor who's pretty religious, and he has a lot of mentees that maybe aren't religious. So he's not afraid to talk about his beliefs and religion and lessons from the Bible and all that. And he always says, if you are not religious, just take what I say as strictly academic. So
that makes sense.
Even if you're hearing Jesus, the Bible, God, whatever, just extract the lessons. Take this as academic, take it as a story if you don't believe it. So I always liked that term. He would give like a blanket statement, like, yes, I'm going to say God, I'm going to say Jesus, I'm going to talk about the Bible. So take it as strictly academic, if that's what will allow you to see past what normally would have you put a stop sign up,
Excellent. I like that. I don't know if tarot's pretty academic. Maybe it can be, but whatever I like that.
Yeah, just extract the lessons from this.
Right. Extract the lessons from it. I love that. Thank you.
No problem. So you say that you use tarot as a tool to help people learn the following things, to go within themselves. And I have a list here of 3 things. So help them with their current energies, issues they're dealing with in their lives, and possible outcomes. Number 2, key lessons that will help them grow to a higher evolution of themselves. Number 3, knowing they have the power to manifest, and that tarot is just a guide. The power to create is in the person. So is there any of those that you wanted to elaborate on, or is that pretty self-explanatory?
It's pretty self-explanatory, but I don't mind getting into, like, so a lot of times people come with their own intent of what they want it to look like. So I can't.
Is that good or bad or neutral? It doesn't matter.
I think it's neutral. It doesn't matter, because they want to get out of it maybe an answer about work or a relationship. Like, I just need this answer. Like, a lot of people will come with that, and that's fine. So I'll start the tarot reading, and I'll see the current situation. I always ask for what's the current situation and see if it resonates with them. So I'll say, this is happening. And so a lot of the times people say yes. And then that's when I kind of throw in my nuggets of information. So if I'm seeing like, if I get a card that shows me that it's a cycle, I'm like, oh, this is like a cycle. It's like a pattern in this relationship, or, and then I'll bring that into play. And they'll say, oh yeah. And that's where they get awareness. Oh, right. This is a pattern in my relationship, or, whatever it is. So I'll throw kind of those things in, and then the lessons, like, so key lessons, the major arcana, I always think there's major and minor arcana in the tarot. The major arcana, when I see those come up in a tarot, I know this is something that this is like a major lesson in life. So something they need to really grasp, and they might be stuck on it. So for example, can I say what one of yours was, or you?
Yeah, go ahead. Up next, I was going to dive into this year's readings that you did a few weeks ago.
Right. Okay. So let's do it now while we're talking about this. So the death card was something that came up for a lot of people, right?
Right.
And death is like letting go sometimes. It's the lesson of letting go the past, letting go in a situation of relationship, letting go finally that relationship, like really letting it go from your heart, letting go of your old self. So because some people want to hold on to the pattern, and sometimes even the attachment, letting go of attachments. Really, I think the Buddha is like all about letting go of attachments. So even attachment to your own body, even in not embracing death, but even the concept of dying gives people in such fear. Like you can really program people in fear when they're fear-based. They're very much very manipulated. So I see that too nowadays, actually. But that concept, a concept of knowing they create, like there's a concept of mother and father that comes in. Like, so what is that father figure? What's a male energy mean to you? Feminine energy? Like, how are you? A lot of women have issues showing up as what is feminine energy showing up like to you? What does that mean to you? So I'll ask questions. If they're not ready to hear it, I just leave it, right? So I leave it for them to contemplate. A lot of people just want, tell me what's going to happen. And I'm like, well, this is like, I just tell me, or should I do this? I'm like, first of all, you ultimately know what's good for you. And I always ask them to check in with themselves. You'll know if it feels good. You'll know if your cells are singing and then dancing and you feel joy when you want to do something. And like, that's what you want to do. I have a lot of people that are doing a profession, they're not happy. And they're like, and I'm like, what do you really want to do? Because I'm seeing here you're very artistic and you've let that go. How can you incorporate that more? Yeah. And I should incorporate it more. And a lot of people, and I understand their financial situation, they can't just stop what they're doing to currently make money and go after their passions. They need a transition period. They need a period where they put the energy, and it's like, just put more energy into what you love and see what happens. And that's kind of how I did it too in myself. Just so I also speak from experience. So, I went and did a course. I saw if I loved it, and like put the energy in it and see what comes out of it. And so
I've heard advice that you should pick just one thing and work as hard as humanly possible on just that one thing and see what happens. Because we're also scattered with like 12 big dreams and all these things we want to do. We're scattered and we don't know how to multitask. And, like you mentioned, what is it where your thoughts go, your energy flows, or something like that. So yeah, if you just dedicated like everything you've got, all your energy, and it's just a spotlight on one area, whether it's like just getting in the best shape of your life or just working on this one album that you're writing, you have no idea what you're capable of if you actually played it 100% in one area. So that's good advice, even if it's for 1 month. Like, give it 1 month to see what you can do with your health. Like, if you've been struggling for 6 years, just it's 1 month. You know, maybe you can't hold it up over 6 months or a year, but can you do something for 1 month and just see? And it's like you have no idea what you're capable of at the end of the month. Like you could have lost 10 pounds and you have endless energy and you're sleeping better, and suddenly you're attracting all these awesome people because of the energy you're putting out and the space you're in. Like you have no idea how much your life can change by just dedicating to one thing. So I always thought that was really good advice.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And that's why when I read, I see the energy and the energy I feel, and I'm feeling this. So I have, you know, some people are, in terms of their energy, are drained. Their situation is very draining, and how. So I kind of usually use the tarot as a tool to just have a conversation with people, like, because they have the answers within them. It's not in the tarot, it's in them. The tarot is kind of letting them see the possibilities, right? And so it's in them, and then knowing and having faith that they can do it. That's why, for me, I remember when I was miscarrying a lot, and I was reading my Bible. I was believing it, but there was something missing. Like, the doctors weren't sure what was happening, and I was like, I want to see a psychic. I'm like, where's my great grandmother? I want to ask her, is this coming? And I remember going to the psychic that I go to actually still once a year. I do a yearly, like January, or on my birthday, I'll see the psychic. And he was like, I see this baby. I see you changing your job. And he was right. Like, not that he was right. He showed me, like, that it was coming. And he was just, matter of fact, yep, the baby's coming. This is her name, and he was saying it. I'm like, yeah, it's coming. He's like, you're changing your job. And I was like, yeah, I was stressed at work. I was having, like, not that the stress was causing the miscarriages, potentially, like, there was a hormonal issue I was having, but I was so happy that I was like, let me make some changes now. Like, am I in the highest vibration to bring a baby in the world? Is this job the highest vibration? So no, I'm like, no, I want to work with kids. And at that time I was working as a speech pathologist still. And I wanted to work with kids. I was in acute care in a hospital, with really old patients, a lot of stroke patients. And because, and that's the time when I was really paying attention to my intuition. Like, I would have dreams of who was dying. It was just overwhelming for me. And but first of all, the nurses, wow, wonderful nurses. Like, what they do, they should be millionaires for what they do. Anyways, that's a side note. But I was feeling so much, but I was drained there. And he told me I would change jobs, work with kids, and then I was getting pregnant. It literally happened in 3 months. And I just, when and I'm like, even if this is BS, like, even because I always had that too. I was a skeptic. I'm a skeptic too. I'm very analytical. I like analyzing, and I'm like, this is BS. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make this true. And just like the opposite, if someone tells you negative news, like, I had my hypnotherapy teacher, where she said that she went to the doctor after an accident, and he said, you're never gonna walk again. And she's like a hypnotherapy instructor, and she's like, she literally told him off. She's like, F you. You're not going to tell me what my body can do. She told him that. And she, like, walked in 2 months later and said, sorry, I had to swear at you because you can't tell me what my body's going to do. Like, you told me this. And, I always remember that story.
But maybe that's like, that's all a part of this cosmic plan where she needed to have someone tell her it's not possible to do what was necessary to make it possible. And that if that guy didn't say that maybe it would be a slower recovery, or she would never walk again or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to know.
Right. That's like the Joe Dispenza's recovery from, like, this. You read his stuff, right? And he knew what he had to do. He's like, no, they said I had to do this and this, and I would, it would. I don't know if they told him he'd never walk again. I can't remember exactly.
I think they said that. Yeah. And he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's the power of the brain, of the mind, of the belief system. So I think that's what I want to let people know. And sometimes we don't get that deep, and I don't tell them all that because I kind of want to gauge where they're at. So it's not always like me saying these such impactful words, because some of my clients, don't want to hear that. They want to hear what they want to hear, and I let them take away from it what they need, what they want. But I have that knowledge where I have that belief system actually. So I tell them, I'm like, this is my belief system. Just coming into this, not that you need to know that, you'll have your own, but I believe you can create your own reality. So when the cards are coming up, I'm working with you to see what's showing up, but you can change it and you can create whatever you want. And sometimes hearing something makes you believe it so much. That's what I think. So hearing it from somewhere else makes you solidify your own dreams. Like, yes, I was going that way. And yes, this is what I want. And yes, it can happen. Or hearing the opposite. Me say exactly what you said. What if I say something? But they're like, no, I don't like that. That's not where I'm going. I'm happy either way because that's what they needed. So, and some people might be like, oh, I hated that tarot reader. She was awful. Like, I get that. And it solidifies, I'm not this. I want this. Great. You know, this is who I am. Great. Are you in more awareness? The point is that you are creating your reality, your life. So I think,
what was
yeah,
crazy about the death card for me, so when you read
yeah,
my cards a few days
yeah,
ago, so the death card comes up, and sometimes it could be a negative, like someone's passing away,
mm,
or what, or the death of a job or whatever.
right,
And in my case, you flip the death card, but you felt a vibe that this was a good death. Like you this is what's crazy is you said it's the death of something that needs to die. And you said you've already chosen to leave something in 2021 that will no longer follow you into 2022. And literally, like a day or two before the reading, I had made a conscious choice that that depression was not going to follow me into 2022. So I've,
excellent.
about the last 3 years, I've been kind of struggling with depression. I had a best
Mhm.
friend that passed away in a car accident. I had a grandpa that died. Had a long-term relationship that ended. All three of those within a few months. And then I'm a social guy. I'm an extrovert. In the last 2 months, the world has had me locked in a room alone for 2 years. So that's been difficult with the mental health. So it's been a journey, but a couple of days ago, or right before New Year's, I decided, like, how long is this going to drag on for? Like, it's been 3 years.
Right.
That's such a long time. And I just consciously made a choice. I said, look, I've done enough work on myself with all the reading and the personal growth and talking to people. And I got a therapist, and I've been journaling and meditating, and I've done everything I can, knowing now that I have the tools to leave depression behind, but I have to make that choice. So I literally made that choice. And then right away you flip the death card and you go, no, wait, this is a good death. You've chosen to leave something behind in 2021. And that's literally what I did, like 48 hours before you drew that card. So it was
I'm
death of depression, death of ego, death of attachment, death of needing to control everything. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on what you
I
felt when.
I'm so I'm happy I validated that for you. And however you receive that validation, like the synchronicities show up in your life through people, through something you might hear on the radio, right? Or, on your social media, through another person. So I think I just came to validate that. So when I speak from my intuition, I kind of just feel, and that claircognizant comes in, ability where I just say what I think you need to hear. And that's why when I flip that card, I just allow myself in this flow space and I don't judge it. So I had to say that. So I'll say different things to different clients and they'll say, I needed to hear that. I'm like, okay, great. Like I'm just a vessel to get you the information you need, to go on your journey and be the best version of you. So I'm happy when I hear this, and it feels like I don't want to take credit for it because you did that. It's not me. I just validated it for you. You made that decision. You received from the universe the validation that, yeah, you're going to do this. You chose it. It's happening for you. Amazing. And you're getting the validation. So I don't see myself as I created that for you. You created it for you. So I just showed up at the right place, right time to tell you. It could have been somebody else, right? Like, I don't give myself that much credit for what I do other than I do get happy though, and joy when I see people understanding themselves and validating where they need to go to be the best version of themselves. So
So
thank you for, yeah.
there were two more readings that were pretty
Mhm.
crazy. And before I get into those,
Yeah.
um, to me, what's astounding is, so how spot on you are with your readings, number one, is pretty crazy. But what makes it even crazier for me is we do it like over Zoom. It's not like you're in person, and I'm a poker player, so I can read people really well. The way
Right.
they move, their ticks, like are they feeling confident or not confident? All of that allows me, regardless of what my cards are, I can tell what to do next based on people and their energies. But you're not in a room with me. You're like
Right.
ones and zeros in another city 5 hours away. So to me, it's not just the fact that your readings are amazing, which would be mind blowing in person, but it's the fact that you're not even anywhere near the person, you're looking at them on screen. So can you talk about how that's even possible? Like, what are you actually getting from the other person when you're just on
Okay. So I feel like that's a good testament to distal healing, even distal, when you send energy out, you can send it to anyone across the world. And that's also a testament to the unified field theorem, like what Nassim Haramein is saying about, he is one of many. Again, we said that where you can direct energy anywhere and feel energy from anywhere around the world. So when I tap in to somebody in a reading, I guess my energy can go anywhere. I think it's limitless. So I think that's what's happening. Energy can even cross time and space. That's what it's doing. So really, I'm tapping into your energy field, and I'm and what I do is when I use the cards, I pick up energy, and I basically I use the cards a lot, right? And if I don't, and I'm not always spot on, and sometimes not feeling it, I can't tap in, and I really just rely on the cards. Like the cards are saying that, and I feel bad because sometimes maybe those clients will feel that, like, oh, she just read the cards. But a lot of the time, I do try to get into that space and that zone to tap into your energy, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just, the remote viewing or astral traveling people do with energy. I know Mind Valley does a lot of work on that, because I took a course actually on the Silva method, Ultra Mind, and basically you can put anyone in your mind's eye and give them healing, send them healing anywhere in the world. So really, you're tapping in to energy, and again, and it speaks to the connection that we all have to get there. It's just the tools of how to get there. Everyone, you can read up on it or look it up on how to get in that space. A lot of my clients ask me, can you provide a meditation course? And I took an amazing meditation course with my mentor a long time ago, who now moved to BC, Belinda Pita. I remember that she was one of the first ones that kind of got me introduced me to meditation and the meditation world and the chakra world. I knew about chakras, but I wasn't that familiar with them. And anyways, so she got us into that space. And so you have to practice it. You have to really practice it. When they say you think of someone and they call you,
Yeah.
like we're always tapping. You think of a song and it comes on the radio. I think you're always not consciously aware that you're tapping into energy fields, but you are. I think we're always doing it.
I had a
Yeah.
roommate once. I was in my room, and so I was in my room, and I had a song stuck in my head. So it's like in my head, I'm like humming this song. And then my roommate was in the shower. He gets out of the shower, he walks by, and he's humming the same song. And like I wasn't doing it out loud, and he was in the shower. And it's like somehow we communicated that, and it was
It's true.
strange.
It's like I say, it's like a radio station, and you tuned in. Like, that's sometimes what psychics say. They're like, I'm tuning into the radio station to hear this frequency, and they tune. So you tuned
Well,
into
everything
the
is
same.
energy, and energy is
Yes,
frequencies, right? So
exactly. So I'm kind of, when I do a reading, I try to like dial into your frequency. That's what I'm kind of trying to do. I'm trying to listen and feel and hear and experience your frequency. So that's what I'm doing. And so I have to like just go in and dial into you, and pretty much give you the messages that I'm receiving from your frequency and vibration, which is interesting because sometimes the frequency drops or goes higher or whatever. I can feel frequencies for different people. So, and I have to be mindful of clearing it also. Just be like, wait, that's not my energy. And I always ask myself, I check in, is this my energy or is this someone else's? Because, with I have two daughters and they have their own frequency, and my husband has his own energy that he comes in with, so that I'm always trying to stay at the highest vibration I can for me, because I like operating in a high vibration. And sometimes it's like the new meditation I'm looking into now is the heart brain frequency, the heart brain coherence. Sorry. So it's a coherence between your heart and your brain. And like Greg Braden has these meditations, Joe Dispenza, and it's on heart math. And I find those are very, very effective. I remember when I worked on Kundalini meditation, where I was really exploring that was like mind blowing, because I had so much information come in when I worked on that. Like to the point where I had never actually seen spirit show up, and I had spirit show up for me during that time. I don't know what was happening. I think I was like taking energy out into my third eye. And so I was able to see with my third eye. And I remember I was seeing Mary Magdalene. She was coming. I thought it was my grandmother, and she identified herself as Mary Magdalene. And then she was showing me smells in a lot of herbs. So I don't know if it was real. Like I went to my psychotherapist right away after that to say, like, I think I'm hallucinating. Like, what's going on? Because I still had that very science brain. Like, tell me what's going on scientifically. Oh, I just dropped this. So I would be like, tell me what's going on scientifically with my brain. And he's like, I think, like, he was like, I think you're receiving legit information. I'm like, what? Like, yeah. So I was like, yeah, that's not helpful, but I want to know what's going on in my brain. Like, why is this happening? Right. So anyways, it was just interesting during that time. And then I did all this research on Mary Magdalene. It's a great book, actually, a lot of great books that I read about her. And one of them was Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson. And it was just interesting information.
She's an important figure in religion. So
right. And it's funny how before she was considered a prostitute, right? And I don't know if that's true. Like I'm hearing that wasn't true. So I looked into it a lot, and like apparently a pope said that she was, and then they retracted that information, and now that she was. Anyways, very interesting. Interesting stuff. But interesting stuff for me about just learning about the brain more, because she then, or I don't know who it was, I kept getting these downloads when I was really practicing Kundalini. And they say, like, I've read that you shouldn't practice it if you're not ready, because it's too much information that comes through. I always do this because you're moving energy up for Kundalini meditation. You feel it. And it was really important for me to practice that, because learning how to use sexual energy, because to me, it felt like Kundalini was this prime source energy at the lower chakra. It felt like sexual energy, and it's moving up. And I have this mentor now who says, like, you have to take that energy and use that creatively. Use that energy creatively, because a lot of people leave it in those chakras and they're creating babies usually with that energy, right? So you are doing the biggest creation of all, right? A child. But it's like, take that energy, move it up, express it out, and move it up. And so I moved it all the way up, and I was seeing all these things, and downloads were coming in. And I guess it was great. It was just so much information. And I would write, and I would see like geometric patterning, a lot of geometric patterns, a lot of smells like, and I would see the brain. It was just so interesting. It was an interesting time in my life. And I think I kind of moved away from Kundalini meditation. I think I'll definitely go back to it. Now I do the brain heart coherence, and after my ayahuasca journey, so I did do a ayahuasca. I really was able to feel in my body. That's one of the things that came out of it for me, and really forgive what happened to my ancestors, because that was something that was, I guess, in my DNA, because I'm Mexican, so I have Native ancestry. And I went to Debbie Papadakis, who's in the Hypno Healing Institute, and she did a regression. And I was having nightmares as a kid of a past life. And a psychic had told me, my psychic had said, this is a past life issue. And then you always hear that it's a past life issue. And you're like, yeah, I came forward with this past life issue. And I'm like, what? What is that? Like, what does that really mean? But I would have nightmares. And then I would wake up screaming. And I remember my mom said to me once, just look at it. You just look at it. And I'm like, I didn't want to look at it. And it was a man in 15th century garb sitting on a sailboat. And I still screamed and I woke up laughing. I'm like, what is that? It's just, and I remember that week when everything was kind of really coming to my consciousness, like, what is this trauma? Something said, turn on the TV, and I turned it on. And it was a PBS special about colonization and how Indigenous people, Christopher Columbus is not their hero. I don't even know what this documentary was about, but they're like the slaughtering of these tribes. And I was like, and I was looking, I'm like, I couldn't breathe. I was having this visceral response. And I was like, is this from my past life? And then when I went to this regression, I saw this past life and I lived, and I was crying. And in the meditation, she's like, look at, how did you die? And I looked down and I had smallpox. And I kid you not, I got this rash, like in this life, like it came out of my head, it came out of my back. I'm like, what's happening? Like, almost like I was reliving. I went so deep into that life that I don't know if it's the memory. I creating it? I created it potentially. That's how strong the brain is, right? That it created again. And it could have been a story that I told myself. I'm not even sure, right? And then when I did ayahuasca, I was able to heal that. You're like, you have permission to let that shit go. Heal it. I'm like, I heal it. I'm not going to live and like, this happened to my tribe. Like, I didn't even speak like that anyways after I realized that. But I was very sensitive to Indigenous here in Canada during that time when I was getting that information. I'm like, what's going on really? Like, how are we treating our Indigenous people here? So that really came to the forefront in the awareness. And then it became a collective awareness. Like, we all learned about residential schools. I didn't learn about residential schools growing up at all. And now we're all aware of this, and how we were treating these caretakers of Canada, really, like of all the land. And so for me, that was a big wake up call and I had to heal that, because I think I had a lot of trauma. And like a psychic would say, like, I brought that trauma with me in this life. So I was reliving this trauma. So it was just interesting. Ayahuasca helped me tremendously in terms of healing that. And I get that a lot about ayahuasca. People heal like addictions, like lifelong addictions.
Yeah, they say the trauma and the challenges will repeat until the lesson is learned. Like, if you keep getting you keep dating the same jerk, or you keep, it's like it'll continue until you learn the lesson. Like, that's why it keeps reappearing, is there's something you need to take out of this that you're just not getting. So you're going to continue to suffer until you take this seriously. So there's 2 more readings you did that were pretty crazy for me. So in this case, you would flip a card, which was like the main thing, and then you would flip 2 more that would have to do with the first card that was flipped. So you flip a card with a house, and then you flip a card with an animal, and then you flip a card that has to do with growth. And what's crazy is, so you flip a house, and for me, it's that I had sold my house and I moved to a new place in a new city. So I'm in Ottawa. So I got a new place. Then the second one was an animal. And 2 months ago, I got this rescue rabbit, Violet. And the third one was growth. And it's the new place plus this other entity that needs me to survive. And it's not just about me and my suffering. It's there's other people and other things out there that need my help. So it was the house and the animal that were a huge area of growth for me. And I would arguably say the last 2 months that I've had her have been the best 2 months I've had in 3 years, and in the last 2 years during the lockdown, there's been a lot of loneliness because you're just alone. I mean, you might have some loneliness, but you're there with your husband and your kids. Like most people are quarantined with other people. And then there are some of us that are literally just alone. So, yeah, in the last 2 months since I got Violet, there hasn't been one day where I felt any loneliness because I'm not alone. I have this fuzzy creature that just loves me and wants to snuggle all the time and appreciates me. So those three cards and together, meaning like one story, were pretty crazy. What are your thoughts on those three cards coming out?
Right. And I always say like it's the power of like the cards that like sometimes they surprise me too. I'm like, wow, it's great. Like this came out. So I am just as equally surprised when it comes out. Sometimes like I stay in that mode of just staying again in that meditative mode. So, but usually after a reading too, I'll reflect. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, wow, those cards came out. I thought the same thing. Every reading sometimes surprises me after. I'm like, I'll tell my husband, I'm like surprised the accuracy of these cards. Me, I am like so surprised. But I think again, it's giving you what you need. Animals, I'd love to speak on that a bit. I love animals too, always have. And I'm starting to appreciate plants more and how they communicate and what energy they bring. And for animals and children, when you're in the vibration of taking care of others, like it takes you out of your mind, really. And if you're of your potential depression or loneliness, like they're the best company, I think, animals, because they say they have a higher vibration, right? I don't know. When I tap into them, they also, I feel, are empaths in the sense that they can pick up vibrations from us, as we all do. We're all interconnected. So I think lifting each other up in this like loneliness and having company is beautiful, and being there. And I know when your pet yesterday was feeling sick, did you not receive all this like energy of healing and love and the feeling of
Well,
love?
I got sick when she got sick. So yesterday she
Yeah,
wasn't feeling well. And then, it's
yeah,
that I was up in the middle of the night and I didn't sleep and all, so like that causes sickness as well. But she got sick and then I got sick. Like I got the
yeah,
sickness vibrations and energy.
yeah. You got the, and now you're both healing. Like
Well, now
sickness.
she's feeling better. She better send that back over here.
She'll send it back. Well, I'll send that to you. It's nice to receive that. I know you put it out for you, and a lot of people are hesitant to ask for healing for themselves. But for others, they'll say, "Please send healing for my friend, for my animal." And it's like when we need it, we don't ask for it, but you can even ask. Just I'll send healing as well to you. But I think it's true. You tap into the energy, and then you'll feel it. I think maybe you take it on. I do that too as an empath. I'll take on the pain of somebody else or their sickness. So I think you did that. You transferred it to you, and now you'll heal.
I
And
extracted like the snake
yeah,
bite, the venom out of
yeah,
the
out of me,
victim, and I
and
took
know
it.
that. Yeah, and don't say like, and words are so important in how you say. You've read the Four Agreements, and I've read this a lot. I think Wayne Dyer would say it a lot. Like, don't say I'm sick and I'm going to be sick for like 14, whenever I get sick for 12 days. Like, I'm healing. Like words have energy and they manifest. So say I'm healing. I took the energy and now I'm healing. And it's just symptoms of your healing, really, sickness. So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, with the cards, yeah, I'm surprised too. I'm not gonna lie. So when I just go with the flow, so I'll get cards and I'll say them, and I'm and when I'm tapping in, I'll just read them and I'll tap into the energy. So if I see that card, which I picked up from you, and this is like one of my first decks I received. So it's not like a traditional deck. It's its own little deck. Anyways, it's an animal card. Sometimes that means old friend. I interpret it, but when I tap in, I'm like, no, this is an animal. And then the house. So really, I just sometimes read it to you, and then sometimes when I'm not sure and I'm not able to tap in, I'll read the cards and tell you the different meanings that come from it. So house could be a new house, changing of a house, energy in the house, and then I have to read the other cards as a story to it, or like information. So I take the information and I say it could mean this and that. How do you interpret it for you, right? And where so the house, an animal. So I really interpreted like house is it's a new house, moving in the house, a new house, and an animal coming in. It could be an old friend, but for you, it felt like animal, and then you validated that for you. And then in the reading, everybody wants to know where they're going, right? Like that's the whole point. Most people call me for that, especially in the new year. Where am I going? Is this going to happen for me? I really want this. And is it going to happen for me? Again, I talked to them about, manifesting. I'll direct them to Neville Goddard's work or anything that works for them, and just the belief that it's going to happen. Anything that's going to help them know what they want to manifest, they can. And then we'll look at the cards together, and I'll say this, this, and this. I'll read it with the information and and that's where we go from there. So if it works out, if it's like I'll get the card for a new job, and it'll look like a new job. And I have clients that will be like, can you just pull one card for me? Like, they'll text me, like, I need to see one card pulled. And one of them was like, someone just told me about that. And I'll pull it for them, but I'll be like, how do you feel? Do you want, like, is this bringing you joy? Do you want to do this? I'll be, the cards look positive, or I don't want them to be thwarted if the cards look negative. I'll be like, okay, they look negative, but what is it that you're bringing to it? What's the energy of that you don't want to follow this path? So, yeah, I don't like, it's funny that I read the cards, but I tell people not to put so much stock into the cards. Yeah. Like, I want them to put stock into their belief system. But again, it's a great way to communicate what's going on, right, in your life. So yeah, this was validation for you. Like, this was going on. This was validation for you, that you made this decision to leave that all in 2021, your past, and it came up. And if you didn't come to me, you probably would have got that validation from the universe. And I believe that. I really believe there's synchronicities. And signs in the universe is showing you're on the right path. And I ask for it all the time. Like Paul Levy, who's written this book, The Quantum Revelation, he talks about, like, you are in a dreamlike state and you put clues in your dream to guide you to the right path. So I just showed up in your dream. Really, you dreamed me up, and I came to validate your creation in your dream. Like, yeah, you're on the right path. Like, you're creating your dream.
There you go. So the final two. So you did more cards than this, but like, we won't get into the relationship stuff and love and all that. My listeners don't want to hear that. But the one we'll talk about is, you flipped a card and it was a boat, and the card came upside down. So it was an upside down boat, which doesn't float so well. And then the next card was a little mouse, and it's known as the robber mouse. So the mouse comes and it robs whatever the card before it is. So it's essentially, it meant the thwarting of plans to travel. And what's crazy is, I'm in Canada. It gets cold. Yeah, it gets cold. Oh, sorry. So you talk, and then it'll bring.
No, go ahead.
No, and then it'll show your card. So right now they're looking at me on screen. I'll change.
Sorry. Yes, these were the cards.
Okay, there we go. Now you're on screen. So there's my boat that's upside down, and then there's a little mouse that's coming to take away my transportation. Cool. So, I'm here in Canada. It gets freezing in the winters. I don't do well with cold. So every winter I go to Mexico for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever. I didn't go last year because of the pandemic and the uncertainty. And then I was considering going this year. And then suddenly, 3 days ago, everything gets worse. Like, the numbers are worse than they've ever been. Here in Ontario, we're in lockdown for 3 weeks. You can't even eat in a restaurant. Gyms are closed. Concerts are shut down. And it's just not a good time to travel. So I had just kind of decided, like, okay, we're going to wait this out again another year. And then a card comes being like, traveling's not happening anytime soon for you. So that was kind of crazy as well. My poor boat got flipped upside down.
I flipped upside down. And, sometimes when I get cards like this, even for people, I'm like, try to make it happen. I'm like, so what, you got these cards? I'm like, how about we try for this energy to go away? So I'll be like, let's try using your manifestation skills and your imagination and the belief that you are going to travel. Because, yes, sometimes this will confirm or affirm what's happening this year again, but I still believe in the power of belief and change, right? Like, I'm like, no. So something like this for me would bother me because I love travel. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, if I went to and I got these cards for myself, I'm like, I'm going to make myself travel. And it might not be as grandiose as the travel plans I had. It could be like, okay, well, you're going to a cottage. Like, but I still create a travel plan in myself if I didn't like the reading. Which I would tell my clients, if you didn't like the reading, create what you want. So that's why I'm like, sometimes you can't just be like, well, there's my travel plans. It might not be exactly what you wanted, but still, if that is important to you to do for your own sanity, like a lot of people need to get away from the energy of work, of all this. And, I had a friend whose travel plans got thwarted with this. She couldn't go to Cuba, and she went to a nice, beautiful cottage, and the energy was still there of travel, right? So it may be saying no, what you planned won't look exactly how you wanted, but the energy of what you want and need can still come. So if it is that.
So earlier you mentioned that I have a hypnotherapy session that's
Right.
coming up. So can you explain to our listeners what hypnotherapy is? If you can maybe share what I might expect. And the last thing I would say is my experience with hypnotherapy is as a musician, I used to play at a big fair in Ottawa every year called the X. Now they have the X in Toronto as well, but I'm used to the one in Ottawa. And so I would be there performing every day or every few days. And there was a main stage where they had this famous hypnotist, and it's your typical show where there's, all these chairs, people sitting down, hypnotizes them and then gets them to do crazy stuff. And you think, oh, they're all like a part of it, and until I had a bunch of my friends go up and they start doing ridiculous stuff. And I know that's not their temperament. Like they would never just do that stuff. They're more reserved. So that's me knowing that guy and seeing that show and seeing my friends being hypnotized. I know that it's a real thing. So I believe in it. But how does hypnotherapy work, and what should I expect in the next session?
Okay. So that's like entertainment hypnotherapy. Like it'd be a hypnotist, right? An entertainer, which shows you the power of suggestibility, right? So what you do, what a hypnotherapy, what I do, and when I go to my hypnotherapist, I get into a meditative state, I call it, really. And in that, for me, it's a directed, it's a purpose. It's like a purposeful meditation where you have sometimes in meditation you just say, oh, I just want to tap in to conscious state, or just nothing. I want nothing, right? Where this has a purpose to change a behavior. So it's what you want out of it. The intent, you and your therapist are going to decide what you want. Like, because you could be like, the intent is to go in a regression. So really it's the intent that you are going to have out of it. So you're going to go into this state, and so you might go to a regress to a childhood. I don't know what your therapist is planning to do for you. Maybe it's a goal, more discovery of yourself. So you're going with intention and improvement, really. So improvement of your thoughts, the way you perceive things. So really, so for example, for my clients, if it was smoking, quitting smoking, like I would give suggestions and for them first of all, to dislike even the smell and the taste and everything of smoke. So put that suggestion in, like, it's not healthy. I don't like it. I only, I'm going to cut down. Sometimes you put the suggestion, you work with, oh, I only have one cigarette, and even, this, or some people right away quit, or they create a new habit right away. So like weight loss, you could say, I listen to my body. I only eat very few calories or very little, whatever it is, right? That you want to have, or I only eat healthy, what's healthy and in line with me. Whatever works for you and your therapist. So what I would suggest is you stay open-minded, because some people, they go in saying, I can't be hypnotized. Like, I can't be hypnotized. And guess what? They won't. They're not going in open-minded. They won't get hypnotized. Yeah. So you have to say, I really want this. I want to work with this, and I want to change this, because your intent is what drives it. And it's really between you and your therapist of what you're working on. But it is meditation with a purpose. That's what I call it. Really, meditation with a purpose to change behavior. Because when you give a suggestion, you have to continue it though. So you'll do what I give is self-hypnosis every day. So before going to bed, someone might have a cue card and they'll say their suggestion, every day, in every way I'm getting better and better. Like that's a really popular one. Every day, in every way I'm getting better and better, and you're falling asleep, and then you drop the cue card, or it's in your head, whatever the suggestion is. And that's, again, getting in that meditative state, giving, it's like self-hypnosis, and then the behaviors subconsciously change. And it could be very direct in terms of the program, I call it the programming, right? Like the condition, the behavior, very specific, it can be, and it can be general. It can just be like, I feel better, I just, or anything. And there's self-hypnosis, like I think there's a app called Reverie where you got self-hypnosis app, and you can just, before you go to bed, I do tell people you can do it on your own. You really can. It's great that you can. If you need some guidance, it's great to come to somebody, but then you can do it on your own every night and what you said, target that one area. I like that. Target that one area, stay focused on that area. So if it is that you have an intent and purpose of why you're going for hypnotherapy, stay in that, do that every night. Like, listen to your hypnotherapist in terms of how you'll work together to get that. And they usually let you go. And I mean, everyone's different, so I don't know what your hypnotherapist will say, but
yeah, so that's the intent. Is for me, the intent is to focus on my purpose. So my purpose, my passion, my mission, all those things. For me, when I have a vision of the future, when I have a goal, so back in the day, it was like, I want to be a goalie in the NHL. And it's like, I would work as hard as needed for that. And then the dream becomes music, and I would work every waking hour. So hard work is not a problem for me, but there has to be something worth the sacrifice. And I've been struggling the last few years. That's a part of the depression as well, is where, you don't have a clear vision of the future that's worth going through the suffering that you go through day to day. So I'm trying to figure out what is my purpose, because now I have time, I have money. It's like, what do I use this stuff for? And, this podcast has been a huge source of happiness and purpose, and it feels like it's guiding me in the right direction. And recently having Finger 11 on and I'm Other Earth, two of my favorite bands growing up, I waited in line for autographs from these guys, and it feels like everything's falling in place. So that's why I'm going, is to have clarity. I know that I'm a creative being, and I should be writing music and releasing music. I should be writing books and releasing them. I should be interviewing amazing people and building something here. And so that's the purpose of this session. So I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't know what to expect, but that's the intent, is to try to dig deep into what the future, what would be worth sacrificing for, that would get me out of bed excited in the morning.
Excellent. And I think that looks different for everybody, right? Oh,
just canceled on me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. So what I think that looks different for everybody. I had, like, a lot of the times I question, like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And for a lot of people, it looks grandiose. It has to be like super impactful, and like it, I have to do this, and sometimes it's just, some days it's just showing up, waking up, and controlling my energy in the sense of being in a high vibration. That's it for today. I just have to show up in love. I don't have any other greater purpose, and let the universe kind of decide what it's going to plan for me today. I was the belief before that I needed, success has to look a certain way, and I have to, I don't know, be successful in a certain way. And now it's just like, my purpose is sometimes so minuscule. Like it feels minuscule, but it's big, controlling that vibration that I come in and show up in the world in. And that's it. Just being happy, being there for my kids, like being present. That is like a hard thing for so many people. That's the present. Like your presence in the present moment is so valuable. Like we always think of, like, what should I be doing? What happened in the past to me? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, right now I'm here in front of Joelle and we're having this amazing conversation. And like, that's it. That was my purpose today. Right now, in this moment, hearing, speaking, interchanging energies. That's it. And every day it's nothing more than like, just show up in the world, show up in the energy that I want. And sometimes not, sometimes it won't be the energy I want because I'm feeling all these energies, but trying to just be, I'm just going to show up and be, right? Because the saddest time in my life was when it looked like I was the most successful. It's interesting because I hear people say that, like, and I mean, success for me isn't like I have so many followers and success for me was like, I have a well-paying job, I have the like 2.5 kids, like, or whatever that is, like, but I was so unhappy, and not because it wasn't in gratitude. Don't get me wrong, I was in such gratitude, but I wasn't present. I was just going through the motions. Like, it was like, get the business done, get it done, get the kids bathed, get the food on the table, clean the house, and I just wasn't in each moment. And I think that to me is so purposeful, being in every moment, being present. It's hard. Listen, my addictions are the stupid scrolling on social media. Like, that's one of my things that I'm like, oh my God, it's like an instant hit. Like, it's like, and now I have to really work on limiting those times. And and like, I would use food a lot as medication. Like, I was more of the food person. Like, I'm happy to eat, I'm sad to eat. And it's cultural, like Greek Mexican food is huge, And I remember all through my 20s, like, we were just drinking a lot every weekend, partying. Like, I don't know how I went to school and work part-time and all that, but like, that was like the rites of passage for in our culture and our generation. I'm like, how the heck did I drink that much and survive? But I wouldn't. So now it's just about being in every moment, trying to be present in every moment and creating the passion in myself. Like, nothing external to me is going to drive me. It's me. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
That's good advice. Yeah.
I don't even.
It's hard to be present, and that's the greatest gift you can give another person is being present with them and making sure they felt seen and heard and understood.
And exactly this is what I want to show my clients, that I'm there and present for them, and they're present, and to teach them to be present for themselves. Because happiness, anything you're looking for in life is not external to you. It's always been in you. Isn't that like Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz? It's always been in you, Dorothy. I'm paraphrasing again. I don't know the exact line.
Yeah. So we've been going for over 2 hours now.
Time
flies. I have one final question for you.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and you could sit down with your 10-year-old self. So there's 2 chairs, there's cute little 10-year-old Mariana, and there's you. If you could whisper advice to 10-year-old Mariana, what advice would you give her?
I would say just love. Just love. Be in love. Be in love. Feel love. Be in love with yourself. Just feel it. Feel the love in every moment. That's it.
That's good advice. So we've covered a ton of stuff over the last 2 hours. Is there anything that we missed or anything that you'd want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Oh gosh, that's that's actually like.
You want to do another 2 hours? Is that what's going on? No.
Yeah, I think the 2 hours
so
covered it. I'm sure I missed a lot. I think what I had to say was there.
Perfect.
Just be present. I think that's what kind of we came out of that. Like,
that's a good motto for us to live by, at least.
Yeah, I think so. And like, and if anybody feels like I could help them on their journey, and being present and giving them some hope.
So where can our listeners, where can they find you if they want to reach out? Whether just to give a little bit of feedback from having listened. Oh, we got a loving animal in the house. That's all good. No worries. So if someone wants to reach out just to send you a message, or if they want to get their own tarot reading or any of that stuff, where can they find you? Should they go to your Instagram? Is there a Facebook?
I would say Instagram.
Is there an email? What's the best way?
Definitely at Mary Magnets, at MARI Magnets, MAGNETS. That's my Instagram. And the website is marymagnets.com. And my phone number is there to message me if they needed to make an appointment. I'm definitely going to redo my website. As I'm evolving, I realize.
Yeah, that's more the neurobiomagnetism.
Yeah,
what
that's
the
all about
website is for? Yeah.
neurobiomagnetism, and I'm going to make it more relevant to what I'm doing currently. So, but definitely the Instagram would be the best way to reach me. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well,
Okay.
Mariana, thank you so much for your time. We did a deep dive for 2 hours. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And the readings from last year and this year, they were a big part of my healing and my journey. And I almost forgot. I got one more quote for you. I can't forget. I got a quote from Jessica Desire-Boissonneau was another one of my friends that you did a reading for. So she's French from Montreal. She's a flight attendant. She's pregnant right now. So it's an exciting time. And she said Mariana was amazing. She was on point with what I was going through at the moment. Very valuable. I would totally recommend her. So that's Jessica Desire-Boissonneau.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm happy that I could just be a little part of your journey in life. Thank you. Thank you. And let's be present.
Amazing. All right. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. And we have an interview with the Mudmen coming up. So rock bagpipe heroes from Canada. That'll be good. So stay tuned for that, and we'll talk soon. Take care, everyone. See ya. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'd love to hear from you guys. My goal is to grow this podcast organically, where you're giving me feedback on topics you'd like me to cover and guests you'd like me to interview. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel, and on Twitter at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.